Welcome to Truvy's Beauty Salon in Chickapin Parish, Louisiana. We are on the set of OpenStage Theatre's current production, Steel Magnolias, at the Magnolia Theater in the Lincoln Center in Fort Collins. I'm Lenny Scovel, and this is Stages. We are in the Magnolia Theater at the Lincoln Center in Fort Collins with OpenStage Theatre and their current production, Steel Magnolias. I'm here today with the director, Debbie Swann, and the costume designer, Rebbeca Spafford. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for joining us on Stages.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So, Debbie, the show, what is it?
Well, a lot of people might remember the movie that came out in 1989. I know I grew up watching it, and it's a pretty famous idea. The movie starred Sally Field and Julia Roberts. But what a lot of people don't know is that it actually was a play first, written by Robert Harling. And it premiered in 1987. And it is an amazing script. Something that's different from the film version is there are no men on stage. Everything happens in Truvy's beauty shop, which is where we are right now. And we only get to see these 6 women in their favorite place to be on Saturday mornings, which is right here getting their hair done.
And what is the story? What is the story of these women?
I don't want to give anything away, but essentially we have 6 women of 3 different generations. So you have Truvy and then Malin, who are kind of in the middle season of life, and Malin's young daughter, the play begins on her wedding day. And everyone is excited getting ready for the wedding. And we have a new girl to the salon who's just barely been hired. She's probably not even 20 yet, and just really trying to find her footing in life. And meanwhile, you have the older matriarchs of the group who are Clary, which is kind of queen bee of the town, and then Weezer, who if she's not a queen bee, she might be the wasp of the town.
Has a little bit of a sting to her.
Yes, that's it. And just the dynamics between not only these generations, but the friendships that they make. And we follow them for about 2 years, and their happiness and as well as their loss.
Magnolias, is it set in the South?
It is. We're in Louisiana. A lot of people think of New Orleans when they think of Louisiana, but we're actually much farther north, kind of on the west side of Louisiana. And yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Rebbeca, what period are we set in here?
It's the 80s, the smack dab late 80s. My wheelhouse, one of my favorite eras. Might be able to tell by my hair. Yeah, smack dab in the mid to late 80s, pretty much.
So, as a costumer, obviously that's going to set your direction. You, as you say, it's your wheelhouse, so you have a familiarity with the 80s. What is your process then in terms of looking at the characters and their particular functions in the show and how you costume them? What approach do you take to help the costume embody the character?
Sure. With any show, and in particular this show, first of all, you start with the script, obviously. I always read it several times. You figure out if there's any cues that the playwright gives you as far as how the characters should be portrayed. So that's step number 1, in conjunction with time period, whatever era you decide to set it in. This is very, very specifically the 80s. References in the script and everything, very 80s. And then I work a lot with the actors, especially in this show. When you only have 6 actors, you have a rare opportunity in, since we do shows of such differing scopes, usually larger shows, it's nice to get to do a small intimate show. I can work with the actors on their portrayal of their character, offer them choices. And for example, several of the characters in this show are significantly different from the characters in the movie. And I would say, like Clary in particular, Olympia Dukakis in the movie, kind of classy, flowy, sort of real bitingly feminine, if that makes sense, but soft Southern. And our Clary, Judith Allen, she has honed in on the sporty aspects of Clary. In the script, it constantly talks about her love of sports and involvement in local sports. So that has been a lot of fun to kind of create new elements that people may not have seen before. And then obviously the region of the country in this particular play is really important. And it was kind of a challenge, you know. I was a teenager in this time period, so that's what I was most familiar with. And then we have, like Debbie said, we have this multi-generational cast of characters. So it's really important for me to do the research on how all the different ages of this particular place and time in the U.S. would possibly look.
And is it difficult as a costumer, and I'm just supposing this, but it seems like the 80s could be a particular challenge because it's not old enough, it's not far enough in the past that there's a backlog of old, you know, sort of period pieces. And yet we're far enough away from it that you don't necessarily just walk down to Goodwill and find a lot of 80s attire.
Find a lot of shoulder pads.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to say.
Right? Lots of shoulder pads, lots of sparkly things. Well, and that is very true. Whenever I can, I like to use vintage pieces, depending upon their durability. Obviously, if we have something that can hold up to, you know, what basically is a month of use. Also, you have to deal with vintage sizing, which is different from our sizing today. And also you have, well, color. You know, I find vintage things, but they aren't always the same color. There's a few challenges.
And they have to look new so that they fit into the
Right.
time that's supposed to be now, not 30 years ago.
Well, and obviously this gorgeous set that you have, you've got kind of a set color palette that you need to work within, right? So
Right, like for example, one of the local sports teams, we had to debate what were the colors of the sports team, because I personally feel like red would look atrocious on this set. So I personally, with my own aesthetic, would not want the Red Devils and, you know, Clary coming in her Red Devil gear, on a peach set. So, yeah.
So Debbie, I remember when this play first came out. It was the it show in the late 80s. It was very popular. You couldn't get out of an acting class without the women all doing scenes from this show. Interestingly enough, it was written by a man.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that until I got my hands on the script. And I was very surprised, pleasantly. But what I think I also didn't know was that a lot of the men that are mentioned never enter the world. They exist in our minds, which I really enjoy. There are a lot of other things just to build on. There's a lot of differences. I think the marriage that Shelby has is much more positive in the film than it is just on paper in the script. And I've really enjoyed playing with it that way. I think, again, having just grown up with the film, I had an idea of what it was, and then when I got the script, I said, oh, it can be so many new things, and it's been reimagined in a new way that I'm really excited to see it.
Well, and that's one of the things that I was curious about. So, well, first of all, would you call it a feminist piece?
Depends how you
good
define feminism. I think it is, one of the things that I really love is it is about women without, it's about women and for women without being in your face or political at all. It's just the story. And I mean, the feminist movement has been going on for decades, if not centuries. And we're kind of in this volatile Me Too movement, which I think is long overdue. But this just shows that women have had amazing stories to tell long before we ever started a hashtag about it, you know, and men have recognized this just as much as women have, and I think Robert Harling is very special.
Well, and especially, I mean, this play is somewhat autobiographical, right?
Yes.
I mean, it is the story of losing his sister to a certain extent. So it's something that he brought heart and heartbreak, and it says in the description in the beginning of the play, these women are not caricatures, you know, these are real people and should be treated as such. Because I think whenever you get into regional representations of people, particularly women, we have certain, whether we want to or not, we have certain preconceived notions of who those people might be, and that was something that he specifically did not want to happen. Don't make this the good old Southern girl, you know, or you know. So.
And I think a lot of our actresses are doing a really good job of adding that kind of honesty and complexity that exists in real people, because they're based on real people that he knew. A great example is the character of Weezer. As I said, she's kind of this woman with the sting, and you know, can spit glass if she needs to, but Denise Freestone, who's playing the character, is doing a really good job of trying to tap into the softer side. Because there are certainly times where you see her heart. The character herself does a really good job of trying to show everyone her edge. But man, she does have a heart in there, and a lot of it is show. And I think we're doing a really good job trying to show how complex these women can be, rather than just these types that I think a lot of productions might fall into.
And you touched on the fact that we're living in the Me Too age. Obviously, your audiences are going to come in here with their Me Too filters on. You can't avoid that.
Right.
How does it play? Does it speak to the Me Too sensibility, do you feel?
Well, I think so. I don't think things have to be, I think feminism, I think one reason I kind of sit there, and I think it has a bad rap. Of course, I'm a feminist, but I think sometimes the media especially, it's like, oh, feminism must mean that you're angry about it. In this play, it's not angry at all, at all.
Yeah, I know there's a new definition floating around that a feminist piece is something that I think it's what mentions men less than 3 times. Well, that is not true in this.
What do they call it? The Brechtel test or something?
The what?
There's the Brechtel test, where there have to be at least 2 named characters. They have to have a conversation, and it can't be about a man. And a ton of plays and films fail the Brechtel test.
Right. And I think that's kind of moved into, you know, the popular culture realm too, that's sort of the doesn't mention men more than 3 times. I don't know. I can't go through my life without mentioning men more than 3 times.
It's interesting,
and
right?
I feel like, yeah, these women, they're living their lives, and we're watching them live in their lives. And it's going to be, I mean, we do this for an audience, right? It's going to be up to the audience to decide if this is a feminist play for them or not, in my opinion.
But it's an interesting environment, and it's an interesting statement by a playwright, I think, that these women are talking about the men in their lives throughout the show. In some fashion or another, part of their lives is defined by their relationship with men that are in and around them. And yet we don't see them. And so what the audience is given is these women's honest interpretations of the rest of the world, right? It's an interesting lens to show the wider world by having this particular cohort comment and create that world for the audience in their mind's eye, because we'd never get to see those characters.
So let's come back after the show and we'll do the same interview and see.
Yeah. I think we
see
have
everybody's
some
opinions.
I mean, when you think about feminism too, meaning that women are going to make the choices that they need to make in their lives, then yes, this is absolutely, and have the power to do so,
empowered.
and be enabled to do so. I would say that yes, this is definitely a feminist piece, because you've got, You know, Shelby, who is making decisions on her own with or without the consent or advice of her mother or her doctors or whatever. You have Annelle, who is who is looking for who she is and trying all different avenues, be it partying or going to church to try and find out who she is. We are in Truvy's adapted carport that her husband basically helped rig up so that she could start her own business. I mean, she is an entrepreneur and has created the most successful beauty shop in town. And Malin is receiving a promotion in the play for being an amazing counselor. I mean, we are dealing with all sorts. And then you have the more traditional roles, like
Well, and that's what I was wondering, because
Clary.
you said that we've got 3 generations of women here. So obviously, the senior generation in this setting, if the play is set in the mid-'80s, then their experience of the world sort of predates what you might consider the modern feminist movement. Is there any tension within the story that bears out between struggles around
maybe
that?
a little between Malin and Shelby, because I think Shelby is making more traditional decisions, even if it's not in her best interest from a health standpoint. Because her husband wants children, and so therefore she must provide them.
Oh, well, she wants them too.
Of
I don't
course,
think that she's...
of course.
Yeah. I mean, I really hesitate to lean too heavily on this piece, on this play, as a woman's play, chick flick kind of thing. I really think there's something for everyone in this show. And even if it's like, again, pop culture, asking men to read Cosmo and women to read Maxim to get an idea of the mindset of those gendered type of discussions in print. If nothing else, come watch this for a slice of Southern life, for a slice of generational life. Yes, it's an all-women play, but I don't think it's something that only has something to speak to women, in my opinion.
No, and it wouldn't have been as popular as it was then, and should be again.
Right,
If
if
it
were
was just that, right?
exactly,
It's telling a human
exactly.
story. It's got a
Yes.
human story arc.
Yes.
And I think that builds in, it is not just this chick flick, as you kind of said, because it is so closely tied into his own personal experience. So the playwright had a sister that died of diabetes, and his friend said, you know, what would help you is if you sat down and wrote about it. And so what started as a short story in 10 days became this play. So I think that's pretty impressive. And just goes to show that it's not someone sitting down saying, I'm going to write a feminist
Right.
piece today. He's writing his life, you know.
Right.
And even if it's women, it's the women in his life.
I was reading a little bit of your bio, Debbie. So you worked in London and studied in London for a while. How does theater in the United States compare with your experiences there? How does theater in Fort Collins compare with broader experiences that you've had in the theater?
Oh gosh, I don't want to say that I lived in London. It was more of a summer intensive program that I did during graduate school. So I would hesitate to say that, well, I have so much worldly
I'm
experience.
cosmopolitan, thank you very much.
But I will tell you, one of the most impactful experiences I had while studying was an actress named Jane LaPatere was working with us on our monologues, our Shakespearean monologues, and she would give us a note. And then she would say, okay, now come back and do it again. So you would just basically turn around and try and take her note and do it again. And she stopped us. You Americans are in such a hurry. Will you just stop and think about what I said, how you will change, how you can take it in, and wait until you're ready to go. And that has really stuck with me as a performer and as a director as well.
So a kind of a different pace of living.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, just be here first,
Yeah.
then go.
If only we could all do
I
it
know.
so easily. And your set that you have here, tell us about the scenic design. It's an absolutely gorgeous set.
Oh, it's amazing. Truly love it. It's designed by Tom Dalbagaria, and the set scenic design is by Carla Brookman, and a lot in a conjunction with James Brookman, and he's done a lot of the beautiful painting and amazing wood grain and stuff on the stage. This place feels real.
Yeah.
Just even sitting up here.
I was going to say, even walking onto this set, it definitely feels. You can almost smell the hairspray.
Right?
Every time we'd come into rehearsal, we'd have a new prop or a new detail. I mean, we open in a couple days, and I'm like, oh, that's new. And oh, this is different. And I'm always finding new things.
And the attention to detail and design, I mean, all of these cabinets, all of the countertops, they're all built for the show. So the craftsmanship is crazy. I mean, they are sturdy, they're deliciously painted, and it feels like I have walked into my teenage beauty salon, you know. And I think the characters can inhabit it very comfortably. The details, like these little kick plates on the way up the stairs, and
For the linoleum. That's,
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yep.
yeah. It's so solid and beautiful.
So how do you, as a director, how do you approach using a space like this?
Well, first you think about the space that you're in. So we seat about 300 people in here. Is it somewhere?
A little less than that.
A little less?
Less than that.
So you got to think about how we have to make sure that it's going to carry as well in the first seat as it will all the way to the back seat. And then you start thinking about sight lines. Okay, you need to make sure that you don't have a set piece that's bothering a person sitting here or over here in the center. We went through several drafts, and this one was especially challenging because they actually have to do hair. And they need to be able to function as though this is a place of business. And so they need, and we kind of were discovering that all throughout. Oh, where do we hang the smocks? How does the washer work? Getting this sink so that they can actually wash hair
there's
with
actually running water. And I mean, we couldn't do it without Kirsty Havorka, our
Yes.
hair stylist, designer, and consultant. You know, right down to the way that you spray hairspray. Kirsty has
something
been invaluable.
Yeah, and something that I didn't know is this sink over here, the faucet, we're just rehearsing, like, oh, wash hair, wash, wash, wash. No, Debbie, the faucet is on the downstage side. It's always on that side. Anyone who knows anything about hair, you wash the hair on this side of the person. I had no idea. So all of the consulting work that all of the designers have had in order to make this actually function. So much more than just your average set in somebody's house that needs a couch and a couple chairs. I mean, this has been a challenge. And it's like choreography in that way too, because somebody can't be going up to write something in the notebook at the same time that somebody else is getting coffee, at the same time that somebody else is getting their hair done.
That's what I was thinking, because going to any hairstylist salon, you get that sense, right?
Yeah.
That there's sort of a sweep
The
and
bustle,
a flow.
yeah.
Yes, exactly right. And I imagined that you had to be mindful of that as you move the people around in
And
here.
then add all the sound design that we have as well. Bill Poole's been doing our sound design and working so hard on not only finding the right songs to play on the radio that fit the period, but also then all the environmental sounds of hair dryers and gunshots in the background and a dog. I mean, there's so much detail that everyone working on this has put in a lot of thought and a lot of effort.
Well, it sounds like the audience is in for a completely immersive experience.
I think so.
We look forward to it. Debbie Swann, Rebbeca Spafford, thank you for joining us on Stages today.
Thank you. Thanks.